Hey guys, welcome to Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. I want to talk about women in left independent media and the failures of the Biden administration today. And my special guest that I have on is here to do just that. Her name is Misty Winston. She's an activist and she's the co host of Facts on the Ground. Hi, Misty.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
Thanks so much for coming. So I know that you and I touched on this briefly on your show, but I want to
Mhm.
hear, your experience as well. Why did you decide to do independent media, and what has your experience been like as a woman in independent media?
Well, I got into independent media kind of sideways. And I really don't even consider myself independent media or a journalist or, I always say it, people make fun of me. I'm just some chick in Ohio who has some opinions and a big mouth and a webcam. But it really was kind of sideways. So what happened is I went to a Jimmy Dore event or a Jimmy Dore show in Chicago, and it was right after Action for Assange first formed. And I was really excited that they were going to be there. The Unity for J weekly vigils were ending. And so I was really excited that somebody was picking up the mantle and continuing that mission. And so I was really excited to meet them. And it was Taylor and Andrew. We ended up sitting next to each other during the Jimmy Dore show. And I got a little drunk. Um, and Andrew asked me if I wanted to come on one of the vigils. And being drunk, I'm like, absolutely. That sounds like so much fun, which is normally I'm like very awkward socially. So it's not something I would have agreed to sober. But yeah, then I realized that I had done it. And if you know Andrew, you know that Andrew is very persistent. And so he messaged me multiple times, like asking me to really come on and be like a guest. And so I went on and was a guest. And then Steve and Andrew were like, well, you just need to come back and be like a co-host. And I'm like, what is happening? And so that's really kind of how it started. And really also another part of it was to save my husband from my incessant ranting, political rants. This gives me like a space where I can talk to other people because it's a lot, I rant a lot. So yeah, but my experience as a woman in independent media or in that space, I guess, hasn't been terrible, I guess. It's obvious that women are attacked more. I think nobody sees it more than Fiorella from Convo Couch. She's
Mhm.
constantly slandered, smeared, attacked, stalked online, doxed. But yeah, I think that that's something that women in any public space really have to deal with. And it's unfortunate. I get my fair share of crap, but it hasn't been too terrible, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. It can be pretty bad though.
Yeah, no, I agree. Because there aren't as many like women in like independent media, especially like left independent media. So you, like we both find that there is a little bit more harsher criticism towards us than like our male counterparts.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that that's something that we see all the time. I mean, in any professional space or in any space, it's always kind of been that way. It's something that we've been fighting back against. I think that we've, seen some headway be made. But I definitely think that there is it's not even just like a harsher criticism, it's just a differently targeted
Mhm.
criticism. And it is it can be abusive at times. I think that that's pretty clear, and it really is never more apparent than, I mean, I know I just mentioned them, but Convo Couch, if you look at the attacks that Fiorella gets opposed to the attacks or lack thereof that Pasta gets,
Mhm.
it's really kind of obvious.
Yeah. That's why sometimes like some people don't respond to the comments. And I've heard people say
Mm.
that too. They're like, I comment, no one says anything back. Like some people just don't read the comments at all because they don't want to like go down that road. So I know that like you're based in Ohio, and I've been curious about this for a while. I had a friend of mine, like this was pre-Trump. They lived in Ohio, and they were telling me, like when they moved to Boston, they said that they felt like Ohio was actually becoming more and more blue. But I'm curious, I want to know from you, how would you describe the political climate in Ohio post Trump?
Post Trump, it's really not much different. Um, there might be a slight shift in major cities, Columbus, Cleveland, Cincinnati. And it's not even more of like a shift to like a more Democratic position. It's just that more Democrats got active in 2020 and actually went out and voted because they had like the fear of Trump. So I don't think it's any like actual change. But I think that Ohio is definitely not turning blue. It has been on a redward slide for a long time. A lot of that has to do with NAFTA. NAFTA devastated the Rust Belt and Ohio voters. I mean, I try to warn people in 2016 that Hillary Clinton was never going to win Ohio. Ever. It was never going to happen. And everybody said, oh, of course she will. Columbus will carry her. No, she was never going to win Ohio. NAFTA decimated these states. So yeah, I think that it's been on and it's also frankly due to some of the worst gerrymandering in the country. Ohio is a hodgepodge, like weirdly shaped puzzle of districts. So it's been on a rightward shift for a long time. And I don't really see that being much different after Trump, post Trump. I mean, there's, if anything, like I said, there might have been some more Democrats who got more active in the major cities, but if anything, I think in rural areas, it's even taken more of a rightward shift.
Mm. Why do you think that Obama was able to win Ohio? And I figured Hillary wasn't going to win either, but looking back on things, why do you think Obama was able to win Ohio?
Obama was a smooth operator. He was very good at convincing people he was something he was not. And I think that that's just why he won, period. And I don't think that's any different in Ohio. I think he promised a lot of things. He said the right words. He had the right rhetoric. And I think that people really bought into that. And I mean, I even bought into that. I voted for him in 2008. I hate myself for it now. And that was really the first time I'd ever, like, other than voting for Dennis Kucinich in the primaries, I had really never paid much attention to voting in electoral politics. I've always been kind of against it. But I voted for Barack Obama. And so I think he really convinced a lot of people that he was kind of an outsider and that he wasn't going to be sort of the same old establishment stooge. And he had kind of, that revolutionary light rhetoric. And yeah, I just think he was really good at convincing people that he was something that he was not.
Mm. And so I know you mentioned NAFTA, and that was under his administration, which Biden was a part of. Speaking of Biden, I know you probably saw like him and Kamala's speech after the Derek Chauvin verdict. It was really interesting to me because this is one of the things that really upsets me about mainstream media is that on CNN, they were praising like Biden and Kamala for their speech. They're like, oh my gosh, this is just what the country needs. They said we need to get like justice for Black people. And meanwhile, I'm sitting at home and I'm like, are you kidding me? Joe and Kamala implemented policies that actually created injustice for Black people. But because it's CNN or MSNBC, they're totally ignoring that. I feel like they're so like hypocritical. Um, what do you feel are some of the failures of the Biden administration so far?
Oh my gosh. Oh, we don't have enough time, girl. So many things. I mean, listen, you're right. You're absolutely right. The idea that anybody is praising Captain Crime Bill for anything related to race relations is just ridiculous. And having Jen Psaki telling everybody that, oh, well, that was 30 years ago and we're focused on his presidency today. Well, his presidency today isn't any better. What has he done? What has he done to make amends for the things that he's done in the past? Has he even talked about reparations? No, of course not. Has he talked about? No, he wants to give the police more money. He doesn't want to defund the police. He doesn't want to abolish the police, of course. He just wants to give them more money. It's ridiculous that anybody's going to try to pretend like he's doing anything of any value for anybody, really, but especially not the Black community. I mean, it's
Mhm.
I can't really speak on it, in any depth, but he's just not a good person. And I haven't seen any significant change. I haven't seen anything that he's done. I mean, the other day somebody said something. I think they were talking about the deportations, which Biden is set to like just outpace Trump by an exorbitant amount. And so somebody was talking about the deportations, and I was like, yeah, but he's not tweeting about it. You see how that's better? And that's essentially the only difference, is that Joe Biden doesn't tweet. He is Donald Trump. And some of us have been trying to tell people this for a long time. It doesn't matter who is president. There is a continuity of governance. There is an agenda that is always followed. And they may, kind of nitpick around the edges or kind of throw some, distractions at you from one side or the other. But there is just this continuity. And it doesn't matter who is president. And Joe Biden is Donald Trump. There is no significant difference. He's not, he's illegally bombing Syria. He's planning coups in potentially Cuba now. They're now starting to eyeball Cuba again. And it's just a completely ridiculous notion that he is any better than Donald Trump, and the idea that they're giving speeches about this thing that they have both taken part in creating the environment that allows for it to continue or to even happen in the first place is really grotesque. It's really it's like it honestly, like it's like cringe, like how you get that like actual physical reaction. It's really one of those things. These are people who have done an unbelievable amount of damage, and they haven't apologized for any of it. They haven't atoned for any of it. They haven't done anything to reverse the damage that they've done, or even acknowledge. In most cases, they don't even acknowledge that these things have been damaging. And then for them to pretend like they're on the right side of history here, and for people to buy into it, is depressing.
Yep. No, I agree. You still see kids in cages under Biden's administration.
More, like,
Yep.
like 4 times more. It's crazy.
And they've changed the term. Now they're not concentration camps anymore because it's Biden doing it. This is one of the things too that used to get me, is like, I feel like if Trump would have phrased things differently, he probably could have had more people come around.
Mm-hmm.
What do you? Yeah, because like he had a point, like when he said things like, fake news, and he had a point to all of those things. But I think it was just the way that he phrased it that really like lost people. He had no filter.
Yes. And I think that's he was really good at, and I don't know that it was an intentional thing that he was trying to expose the underbelly of the corruption and all of that stuff. He just has no talent for subtlety, and he has no filter. He has no gift for knowing when to just shut up. And so sometimes he would blurt things out that he wasn't supposed to say. And it's not because he's noble or he was trying to do the right thing and expose, some wrongdoing or some hypocrisy or whatever. He just didn't know when to stop talking. And you're right. It's just because he's very brash and he's very blunt. And so that does tend to turn some people off in certain ways. And I think that you're absolutely right. If he would, and it's not just that he said things the wrong way too. I think that the media was going to spin him into, whatever they needed him to be. And so, just the way that they covered him. If you just look at the way that they covered Trump compared to how they cover Biden, everything that Trump did was evil. It's like the most evil thing we've ever heard of ever. And then Joe Biden is president, and we're getting news stories about scrunchies and dogs peeing in White House hallways and cardboard hearts on the White House lawn for Valentine's Day. And, we're being told that they're not fulfillment centers. I'm thinking Amazon, but their overflow facilities. It's this complete rhetoric shift where nothing has fundamentally changed, like Joe Biden promised it wouldn't. But the rhetoric, the tone of the media. So, Trump was going to be painted as whatever they needed him to be. But yeah, you're right. He did tell a lot of accidental truths for sure.
Yeah. And also I feel like the Biden administration hasn't been as aggressive, considering we have like the House and the Senate and the presidency. They haven't really done, like when we go back to last year and they were trying to pass the $2,000 stimulus. Remember, Trump tweeted, Republicans better, approve this or you're going to have a death wish.
Mm-hmm. It's crazy, isn't it? Trump wanted more. Like Nancy Pelosi talked Trump down from more money, which is fascinating to me that more progressives don't talk about that. But yeah, it's this weird thing where This is how it always goes too. When Republicans are in office, they are absolute bullies. When they're in power, I shouldn't say in office, but when they're in power, when they have control over things, they are absolute bullies, and they will push anything that they want through. And Democrats will acquiesce to that. They will go along with it, and they'll pretend that they don't. Oh, well, they're in power though, so there's not much we can do. And they always play like they're the, they can't. They're just powerless. They can't do anything. And then when Democrats have power, then they find their fall guy, whether it's Mitch McConnell or Joe Manchin or whoever it needs to be. But there's always an excuse for why they can't get things done. And that's because both parties work for the same people and for the same agenda, and everything is theater, and they're actually working towards the same ends, and they're putting on a show for people. And so it really, again, it doesn't matter who's president. It really does not matter. It doesn't matter which party's in charge. The same shit's going to get done. It just matter. The only thing that changes is the kind of the window dressing. It's a different cover on the same book, basically.
Exactly. So I want to get your opinion about this because someone brought this up to me the other day, and I've been thinking about it ever since. Someone told me, they were like, do you think that Trump would have actually been better for the left? And I haven't answered that question yet. I'm still thinking about it. What's your opinion on that?
That's a hard question to answer. I think probably, because I think that in a way, Trump was already good for the left. Watching what happened over the 4 years of Trump, and watching the Russiagate stuff, and watching how the Democratic Party handled itself, watching how Bernie Sanders completely turned into like a puddle of partisan ridiculousness. I
Mhm.
think that really woke a lot of people up who were left leaning, but were not like fully aware of how bad it is. And so I think that was very beneficial. I think, and again, Trump just blurting out the truth constantly was very helpful, because he said a lot of things that, people suspected, but there's always that part of you that thinks, oh, come on, they wouldn't do that. When you haven't really been exposed to like what's actually happening, I think that there's like a lot of people who are like, oh my gosh, I wonder if we're really just going to war for oil. But then they're like, oh no, come on, that's we're the good guys, we're the US, we're spreading democracy or whatever. But then when Trump just comes right out and says we're going to go steal their oil, you
Mhm.
can no longer ignore that that's what's going on. So I think that was kind of beneficial. Had he won a second term, I don't know how that would have worked out for the left. I think that, it couldn't, I'll say this, it wouldn't be any worse. Better or worse. That's so hard, because Donald Trump and Joe Biden are really kind of the same person.
Mm.
So it's really difficult to say I can say for sure it wouldn't have been any worse. Would it have been any better? Maybe, but if anything, it wouldn't have been like a significant difference, I don't think.
So I know you're not big on electoral politics, but I want to get your opinion about this. Um, More people are starting to run as independents. I'm going to be talking to Steve Cox this weekend, who's running as an independent in California. What is your opinion about candidates running as an independent as opposed to a Democrat or a Republican?
Well, I think if you're going to participate in electoral politics, then you should run independent. I do not think that is a viable option. I think that if you have a system that is like ours, completely corrupted to its core, there is never going to be space for a third party candidate or a third party in general to really make any headway. I love Steve Cox. I have donated to Steve Cox because he is running independent. I will not donate to Democrats or Republicans. I don't really donate to politicians, period, but I love Steve. I support him as a human being. I respect the fact that he's running. If you're going to get involved in electoral politics, I think that's the only way that you should even be considering it. Anybody running as a Democrat is doing a huge disservice to the movement, in my opinion. But I don't think that even if Steve happens to win, will be able to make any significant difference in a system as corrupt as ours. There's going to be one dude up against all of the corruption, and I just don't know how that's ever going to be an effective way to fight back against that. It's going to be a hard fight anyway, and I don't begrudge anybody who's running. I don't want you, I mean, if that's what you feel that you can do, because there is some benefit to it. It does get issues out. It does. I mean, if you're pushing for leftist issues and you're running on those issues in your communities and you're talking to your neighbors about them, that's always a bonus. That's always a good thing. So I'm not begrudging anybody who wants to participate in the system that way. That's just a difference of opinion on tactic. But I just don't, to me, I think that if we really want to start thinking about what happens after, um we're going to have to start thinking about how we can support each other. Like, I'm really big on mutual aid, direct action, organizing outside the system, trying to figure out ways that we can work around the system in order to take care of each other. Because if we organize those sort of communities and services and systems, it'll be much easier for us to kind of attack the establishment from the outside, because people will have a safety net. They'll be able to hold sustained general strikes or whatever that we need to do in order to get things moving in our direction, because there will be like that safety net of community. So, I mean, and again, if you want to run. I mean, just do it the right way. Run independent, even if you know you're going to lose. I get it if you're in like a hardcore Democratic district. I get it, but run independent, run hard, and run on the issues. Like, just go talk to your neighbors and get as much publicity as you can. Use social media to your advantage. I think there's a huge benefit in doing that. It's just, for me, I don't think electoral politics will ever be the game changer. It's never going to be where we see any real substantive change.
So, as someone who lives in Ohio, on that same note, do you think that Nina Turner should have ran as an independent, and would
Yes.
she succeed in Ohio with that?
Nina Turner, potentially, just because she has name recognition. She is fairly well received in her district. I think that there's definitely a possibility that she could win. I mean, she already has, a massive email list. I mean, look, she's already bringing in a crap ton of donations. So yeah, I don't think that there's any excuse when you, especially if you have that kind of foothold in the media narrative, and you have the name recognition, you have the support, you have the backing of, big names who have big platforms that will help you. I mean, to me, there's no excuse for somebody like Anina Turner to be running as a Democrat. And so it was really not surprising at all, but disappointing that that was the route that she chose to go.
Mm. So, one thing I saw recently on The View, as much as I hate that show, they've turned into the political view. Uh, they were talking about how the country is moving further left. And it's interesting because even when Bernie was running, I felt like I was still a little bit further left than Bernie, like on some things. If the country is moving further left, why do you think that is?
We're not. It's not. That is a complete delusion. The United States has been on a severe rightward shift for decades. I don't think it could be any more apparent than the fact that the two candidates that we were left with in the year 2020 was Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Joe Biden is arguably to Donald Trump's right on a number of issues, including maybe foreign policy. So I mean, the idea that we're moving to the left is so absurd to me. And I get that, Bernie Sanders is, the whole Bernie Sanders phenomenon makes that argument seem like it makes sense, but because you get the whole, well, Bernie shifted the conversation. But he didn't really. He shifted the conversation on a couple of issues that were already being shifted to the mainstream. And all he did really was shift people who would otherwise be willing to actually put up a fight against the establishment and back into a system and a party that is designed to destroy them. So yeah, maybe he brought more publicity to things like Medicare for all, which is not left enough for me. I mean, you said you're slightly to Bernie's left. I'm way to Bernie's left. So it's, yeah, maybe he brought a little bit more attention to some of those issues. But if you look at what he's done now, on those issues, he stopped talking about Medicare for all. He now talks about expanding healthcare. He stopped really fighting for $15 an hour. I mean, look at what they did with the COVID relief bill. They didn't fight for $15 an hour. There was no fight. So these are things that he, pretended to care about, got everybody really excited about, and is now sheep herding them back into a party that will never allow those things to happen. So yeah, I don't think that this country is in any way moving to the left. It is on a very dangerous slide to the right. It has been for a really long time. That's something that I've been talking about for years, just based on my activism for free speech and press freedom. If you look at the way that, the journalists are being attacked, Julian Assange is being tortured, our civil liberties are being taken away, stripped away daily. There's no way that anybody could convince me that we're moving to the left ever. It's terrifying, actually.
Yeah, that's one of the things I used to tell people, like back when Bernie was still running, and some of the commentators would say that, like, look, most people want Medicare for all. I keep telling people most people in this country are left, and I'm like, nah, dude. Like, like I live in Massachusetts now, so Massachusetts is a pretty progressive state. But even in Massachusetts, you still have your pockets that are very much red. And coming from the South, I can tell you people are not as left as you think. Like, I've had these discussions like with my friends and colleagues about these issues. And it's true. A lot of them do think we should have healthcare for everybody, but not enough to the point where they were willing to vote for someone like Bernie. And there's still a lot of people in this country that have a big fear against any type of socialism policies or something that's for the people. If I'm telling people, if you go down south, go to South Carolina, go to Georgia, Warnock and Ossoff would have not been able to win in Georgia if they were far left. And I think people need to like understand that. I'm like, no, we have to get outside of our circles. And I think that's the thing. We're so used to a lot of times being around people that have the same type of political thinking that we do, that we forget that not everybody thinks like us.
Yes. And that's a real problem because you're right. Most people do want healthcare, but here's the thing. They have been thoroughly propagandized against the idea of Medicare for all. I mean, there's a whistleblower, I think his name is Wendell Porter or something like that, who used to work for the health insurance companies, literally creating propaganda to manipulate and mislead the American populace about the Canadian healthcare system. And, just lies, constant lies. And that's what they do. And so there's a significant portion of the population that really doesn't understand what Medicare for all is, how it works. I mean, you still have people trying to tell you that we can't afford Medicare for all system, despite the fact that every study ever done on it shows that it will save us money. Period.
Yep.
It's just not up for debate, and it's a lot of money. But you still have people who will tell you, if you ask them, do you support Medicare for all? Well, we can't afford that. Well, how really? Because it's cheaper. How can we not afford something that's cheaper? That's bizarre. So yeah, it's really, and again, it's why I am so heavily involved in press freedom and free speech, because the propaganda is where it's at. That's the front line. That is absolutely the front line of all of the battles that we face, because, the government has the ability. I mean, if you think about it, our mainstream media is all owned by corporate America. And corporate America owns our government. I don't think there's any question about that. So we have state-run propaganda on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, in every doctor's office, dentist's office. When you go get your oil change, it's at the gym, it's in every airport. And so people are being thoroughly propagandized on a daily basis against their own interests. And they're very, very, very good at what they do. So yeah, I think it's this weird thing where, and if we just talk to people, and you're right, we're going to have to talk to people we don't agree with. That's just how it works. That's part of being an adult and a grown up and having like a real conversation with other human beings. And it's, nobody said it would be easy or comfortable, but it's stuff that needs to happen. Because there are a lot of people who are getting fed constant misinformation. And the only way to combat that is with legitimate information. I mean, you cannot just ignore those problems and they'll go away. That's just not how it works. Like, you can't pretend that racists don't exist and they'll just go away. That's not how that works. You have to address the problem. So yeah, I think that that's a significant piece of what we're facing right now, is trying to get people de-propagandized, however that works.
Yeah, I mean that's why when some people were upset with Jimmy Dore, like when he had right wing like
Madness.
people like on his show, or when he went on to I think it was Carson's show.
Mm-hmm.
And my whole thing was looking at it from a different perspective. You need to reach other people. If we're just talking to each other that are already leftists, like I don't need to be convinced. You don't need to
Right.
convince me that Medicare for all is a good thing. You need to convince people who are outside of this space that are probably only watching Fox News. So that's why I try to tell people, like, you have to expand your audience.
Yes. And Tucker Carlson has one of the most watched shows on cable news. He gets 5 to 6 million viewers every single night. So if Jimmy Dore or Glenn Greenwald or Aaron Matei or Rania Kalik or Anya Parampil can go on Tucker Carlson and talk about leftist issues, and expose people to leftist ideas who would otherwise never be exposed to those things. That's a win. If we can exploit Tucker Carlson and his huge platform to talk to people about things that they would probably not ever hear about in a real way, it would be unbelievably self-defeating and stupid to not take advantage of that. And Tucker Carlson sucks. He's a horrible person. But that wouldn't stop me from exploiting his seriously monumental platform um
Mhm.
to go talk to people. I mean, it doesn't make sense to me why people get mad at that. It doesn't make sense to me why people are so mad about when he interviewed a Boogaloo Boy. He interviewed a dude who gave a very good speech at a BLM rally, a dude who has been to Black Lives Matter events and put his body in between protesters and cops. And I'm not saying you have to join forces with Boogaloo Boys, or I don't really know that much. I mean, I know a little bit about them, and I don't think it's really like a centralized group anyway. I feel like it's a very new and scattered group with different, sure, there are probably some racists involved in that. There are racists on the left, fam.
Mhm.
There are lots of racists on the left. Really, you're going to dismiss an entire group of people because there might be a couple racists running amok? Or do you just want to sit in your safe space and feel smugly superior, or do you want to win? I would rather win. I would rather get some change. And if that means that I have to have uncomfortable conversations with people who maybe I don't even like, then that's okay. I'm going to do that because it's more important to me that my kids have like a habitable planet and free speech and don't live in a authoritarian nightmare. So, I mean, maybe that's just me, but it seems really silly to get mad about people trying to reach out and make those bridges. Because again, my favorite thing is if you talk to somebody who's like slightly to the right of Bernie Sanders, all of a sudden you're a Nazi enabler or
Yep.
a fascist. And that's ridiculous. Like there's a whole lot of space between Bernie Sanders and actual Nazis. Like there's a lot of people in here who we could be talking to who are really just propagandized against the wrong people and the wrong things. They've been misinformed. They've been emotionally manipulated. They've been getting screwed over too. And they're just mad at the wrong stuff. And they can be reached. I live in small town Ohio. I'm surrounded by Trump voters, and they're not terrible people. Are they casually racist? Probably some of them, and that's unfortunate. And I'd call it out anytime and every time that I see it. But can I still have conversations with them about Medicare for all and why that would benefit them and their families, and maybe bring them around on that? Can I talk to them about why $15 an hour makes sense? Can I talk to them about the fact that Jeff Bezos needs to be shot into the moon?
Mhm.
Yes, those are people who are absolutely angry about those things too. And that doesn't negate the fact that they are potentially casually racist. But I don't know if you guys noticed, but I'm like very white. It's the height of privilege for white people to be like, oh, I'm not talking to those other white people because they're racist. That's your problem. That's my problem. That's our problem. It's a white people problem. Like you can't just brush your hands and be like, I'm not dealing with that. No, it's your responsibility to go deal with that. It's not like I'm asking you to go like to a party and hang out with some KKK members, but
Right.
they're just your neighbors. They're just ignorant. They're ignorant, and ignorance is fixable. All you have to do is educate people.
Yep.
And, just washing your hands of the problem as a white person is just so privileged. It really is. And I'm so tired of people getting mad at me, getting mad at people like Jimmy Dore for trying to make those. And if you don't think that you are personally capable of doing those things for whatever reason, that's fine. I mean, I get it. Like, not everybody is willing or able to do the same stuff, but don't shit on people willing to do that work. That's ridiculous. I mean, if somebody is
Nope.
willing to reach out to other people in the white community and try to educate them and not just dismiss them as irredeemable, because they're not. Like, 75 million people voted for Trump. Are you really trying to tell me that every single one of those people is an irredeemable racist? Of
Right.
course not. It's silly. It just makes me super angry that white people try to absolve themselves of their own responsibility.
Yeah, I mean, at least he's like willing to have those conversations. It's not an easy conversation to have. Like me and Chris Richards, we were just talking about this when I went on his show, and he was saying that we need to be having these conversations. Like, you can't just sit back, like you said, you can't just sit back and just be like, okay, whatever. I'm not going to get involved with this. Not my problem. Like, I think that's one of the problems that we have sometimes, like on the left, like we're not willing to talk to other people who
Mhm.
may think a little bit differently from us, and you got to be willing to have those conversations.
Well, I think
um
on the left, it's a lot of a problem of, we think that not we, some people who are on the left have this like feeling of superiority.
mhm,
And if you are slightly outside of what they deem to be acceptable, then you can't sit with us. You know what I mean? It's that
right.
Mean Girls thing where you're not cool enough for us. And it's so silly. I've never seen anything more self-defeating. It's clear that these people really do not want change. They don't want to win. They don't want anything to get better. They just want to feel superior. That's all it is.
I can see that. All right, Misty, I have one more question for you. What advice would you give women who are thinking about doing independent media?
Do it. Do it. Do it. Do it. Do it. Do it. We need more voices. We need more women in independent media. We need more independent media, period. We need, the only way that we're going to be able to combat the propaganda machine that we're up against, which is ginormous and well funded, is by having more people, more voices, boosting each other, sharing each other's stuff, supporting each other, all of those things. So, I mean, to anybody who's thinking about joining independent media in whatever capacity, if you want to write and put your stuff on Medium, or if you want to start a podcast or a YouTube show, or if you just want to do like some researching or something for another show, if you want to do stuff like Robbie Yeager does, and do like a lot of financial disclosure stuff, anything you want to get involved in, do it, because we need more people, and especially women, especially on camera females. We need more women voices. There are very few, and there should be more. So yeah, that's my advice. Just do it. I mean, reach out for help. It took me a long time to get up the courage to do it. I thought about it for like I said, like had to keep badgering me a little bit to do it. But there were women that I reached out to, Caitlin Johnstone, Elizabeth Lee Voss, Taylor Hudak, that I went to, and I was like, I'm thinking about doing this, but I'm really nervous. And they were all incredibly supportive, and encouraging. And there are women out there who want you to, join in too. Reach out to them, reach out to me. I mean, reach out. I'll help in any way that I can. I'll help boost your stuff. I'll help. If you need a pep talk, I got you, we have to have each other's backs, especially women, but independent media in general, but especially women. We have to have each other's backs, because it does get nasty out there. So don't do it if you think that, it might damage you in some, a lot of people are dealing with a lot of stuff right now, but if it's something you think that you can handle and you have thick enough skin to do, there are women out here who will 100% support you and have your back. So yeah, that's my advice. Just do it. Go for it.
Awesome. Everyone, I'll be sure to put Misty's link in the description below for Facts on the Ground. Misty, thanks so much for coming today.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. It was fun.